quite busy day here being Giving Tuesday. Oh, here's Candace.
Good morning. How is everyone?
Good morning. Great.
Great. You never know how many people will join you for these events that will be live or if they will be joining us later when it's recorded. And so thank you for taking time to be with us this morning. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining here in Omaha. I hope that it's shining for you guys too. I think that people can just pop on. There is no waiting room or anything like that. So I want to be a good respecter of your time today. And so if you might have any questions, you can jump in the chat. Kristen is up there in the box. If you can see her, you probably have heard her name. She actually is our fabulous public relations director. We do a podcast monthly, and really the Coffee with Candace is how some of this has come about, so that we could have some meaningful conversations. And so I'm going to share my screen with you today because I have a PowerPoint with probably way too much information. And so I'm hoping you can see it. There we go. And so you hopefully see a screen that says, let's catch up on hunger and homeless. Is that true? Yay. Thank you, Carol, for a thumbs up. And Keith is shaking his head, and I see Logan is as well. So thank you so much. Well, I'm super passionate about the hunger and homeless and the population we serve. And I think that's why I've been here for 28 years. We are so excited to share with you that we are seeing the face of homelessness change. And maybe you are too in your surrounding neighborhoods. I think the face of homelessness for many of us has looked like a man. And we have now seen that has changed and moved to that of a woman, with children being the fastest growing population of the homeless, not only here in the Open Door Mission campus and in our neighborhood, but also across the United States. The average age of a homeless person is actually 9. Here in the Omaha Southwest area, we actually have about 2,000 people that we can count that are homeless in the heartland every night. Now, I want to share with you honestly, I think that number is much higher. These are people that we can count that literally have come in for asking for services, are sleeping in a shelter. We aren't counting all those that are couch surfing, staying with family, that are holed up in hotels, in living in their cars. So really, this number, I think, reflects a much higher number in our communities that we see. Interesting enough, when we talk about homelessness, I always say the basic is having no home or permanent place of residence. Interesting enough, though, many of our homeless will tell me that, Candace, I'm not homeless. I'm living in my car, or I have a tent, or maybe my friend Ed, who's living on a bench right now. He considers himself not to be truly homeless because he has all his belongings underneath the bench and behind the bench. And so he believes, I'm not truly homeless yet. And so it's really relative how people define homelessness. Interesting enough, we see a lot of, and actually this is a lot of verbiage, and we'll actually be sending this out to those that registered who couldn't be with us live. And that way you have it to reflect on. We do not receive government assistance here at the Open Door Mission, but we do follow best practices, and we do follow the HUD definitions for homeless. And you can see that HUD really attempts to define those by a definition of homelessness. And so we try to do that as well here at the Open Door Mission. On our campus, we have 916 safe shelter beds, and I wish that was enough beds for everyone. But we currently have a count that goes out every Monday. It's nice and color coded and easy for us to read. But we currently have 25 men in our emergency service department that are in overflow, sleeping on mats on the floor. Some of that is that they physically cannot get up on a top bunk. We have learned a lot Many of our people, although their biological age, it says that they're 50 or 55, they actually look to be about 20 years older because of their experiences that they've had on the streets. And I just showed a bunk bed here to show you that it's not always convenient or easy for someone to climb up on a top bunk who has some physical impairments and ailments from being out on the streets and in the elements. And so we're looking at some of our new structure and our new buildings of how we will be housing people because the top bunks are near impossible to get into with some of our population that we serve. We have several meal programs on our campus, and we currently have 4,747 hot nutritious meals that we serve daily through those programs. We have our 3 hot meals that are served here in our community dining room. We also do consumer choice pantries that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then also we have a SAC lunch program. So if you're leaving our campus, we provide a SAC lunch for you. And then we also do street ministry, where we provide meals for those that are hungry. Every day, we serve about 1,000 individuals that are empowered to remain in their own homes through homeless prevention programs. We actually are serving through the November month, on average, 250 to 350 families that are coming to supplement their income. One of the growing populations within the homeless prevention programs are seniors. We consider them to be cash dry but asset heavy. So they've worked all their life, they live in their homes, but they're coming to supplement their income because their medications are costing them anywhere from $700 to $1,000 a month. And so they're coming to pick up Depends, canned food items with the pop top cans, toiletry items. It truly is a growing population that we are serving here at the Open Door Mission. You know, God is bringing the world to Open Door Mission. We serve on average a little over 100 different languages. We use picture communication, and we actually use Google Translate, which is not great, especially when you have Russian, Burmese, Sudanese, and there's so many different dialects. But we are really challenged with the huge ethnic diversity that we are serving through our outreach centers. We actually see some common factors to people that are that we are serving here at the Open Door Mission campus. And so I thought it'd be a good thing to just point out that it's very complex. The reasons that people are experiencing homelessness are as diverse as the people themselves. We have a true lack of safe, affordable housing in our community, and we can actually say we're in a housing crisis. It didn't happen overnight. This is accumulated over years where we have not replaced a safe, affordable housing. And now we're in a situation where we have a real housing crunch, and we're bottlenecked in our shelter services where people have maintained sobriety, paid off their credit card debt, they're working, but they cannot find a place to live in our community. There's a real lack of education. No Child Left Behind left casualties throughout our communities, where we continue to push children through grades when they did not know the curriculum. And now I have a whole population of people who cannot read and write. And that makes it almost impossible to earn a livable wage. And 60% of our adults have less than a grade 6 education, less than a grade 2 reading level. And we have 2 adult learning centers on our campus and 2 children learning centers. And so education is truly the ticket out of poverty. It's one of our 40 programs that we offer for free. And if you ever have a question, please feel free to go down to the chat bar. And you can, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. You can literally add a question that you might want to have us answer. I'm going to go back here because I meant to show you the chat bar and I ended up moving my PowerPoint ahead. Lack of life skills. You guys look great today. You probably brushed your teeth for us and combed your hair, Carol and Keith, and you look amazing. But literally, we have to work with our guests and consumers on life skills, because not too many employers want you to come to work with not having good hygiene, not having social skills to not F-bomb people when you get frustrated. And so all of those life skills we work with our guests on learning. Mental illness is another crisis in our community. We truly have a mental health, behavioral health crisis. 1 in 4 of our guests struggle with mental health. And many of our guests have chosen life-altering addictions to self-medicate themselves. We do have a New Life Recovery program on our campus, and we see a much success in that program. Domestic violence, 50% of our women and children are victims of domestic violence. It takes a woman 7 times before they actually leave for good. And so we are dealing with a lot of issues at the front entrance of our emergency shelter. And life-altering addictions. What do you think is the #1 life-altering addiction that we are dealing with on a daily basis? Any ideas? Keith, what do you think?
I'll say alcohol.
You are correct, Keith. It's legal and it's cheap, and it still is the #1 choice. And so now I will be honest with you, we are seeing a lot more different addictions, not just chemical substance like methamphetamines and narcotics and prescription, but even gambling and pornography and other life-altering addictions that lead people to the doors of the Open Door mission. I can share with you that homelessness results in a complex set of circumstances, and it does require people to make a choice between some real basic necessities, and it literally breaks down that they just do not have enough to make ends meet. And that's why we see a 250% increase in homeless prevention programs at our outreach centers in Council Bluffs, Elkhorn, and in our Northeast campus. You know what we don't know about homelessness? More than 2.5 million people and children in America do. That is truly a staggering number when you think about going to bed at home tonight, knowing that there's that many children that will be homeless in the United States. We do see, and a lot of people ask me, and I threw some slides in here, about physical. How does it affect people who are experiencing homelessness, Candace? Well, we see that lack of consistent access to basic necessities actually lead people that they have 60% do not have medical insurance. And so here at the Open Door Mission campus, we have a free health and wellness clinic, and we actually divert about 300 patients from the ER. And so we are saving taxpayers millions of dollars through volunteerism in the medical profession. Another thing that's staggering that I thought you might be interesting is that 90% of families that are experiencing homelessness are not caught up in their immunizations and their baby well checks. And so we see a lot of our children that not only have some physical ailments, but also cognitive trauma when they've experienced homelessness. And of course, without that preventive care and that stable physical living environment, they are sicker 70% more than usual normal people in our community. So we see a lot of colds, flu, upper respiratory, bronchitis, and of course, ear infections and sinus infections on a regular basis. People ask me all the time. I just spoke to teachers last week, and they were asking about the effects of people experiencing homeless mentally. When you have that transient lifestyle that leads to instability, you're also seeing that people have that poor attention span. They are not getting proper sleep, and so that frustration and focus and depression is much easier to lead to actually have. We see a huge increase in that institutionalized thinking, and it's very hard when you are mentally trying to be positive when you're experiencing homelessness. Emotionally, you're living in crowded conditions a lot of times. Here at the Open Door Mission, we try to give a lot of space here in our public space, and that's why we're building some new facilities in the next 3 to 5 years to even give more space to people that are experiencing homelessness. But I can tell you, on a regular basis, we see some of these common factors emotionally Hoarding food is one of the biggest ones. And if they're not hoarding food, you can imagine a child who's lived in a car or an efficiency apartment with their younger siblings. They're constantly having the smell of a dirty diaper. When they come to the Open Door Missions Lydia House, it's not uncommon for a child to want to hoard a dirty diaper so that that smell is in the room, so that gives them some safety. And I know that's hard for us to understand, but there's some definite trauma that children have experienced living in crowded conditions. We see people experiencing homelessness, feeling very socially, feeling very much neglected and isolated, and living in those crowded conditions and fearful of losing possessions. And so again, always keeping everything on you so that you don't lose anything. And there is some guilt and shame that exists when you can't provide for yourself with hygiene. You know, when I talk to my friends that are experiencing homelessness, these are some of the words that they literally have described how they feel. And I don't know about you, but if these were words that I was describing how I would feel, it would be very much hard to have hope to continue each day. You know, some social problems are getting older and some are getting younger. As I mentioned, the average age of a homeless person is 9. When we talk about did you know, I threw out some of these things that might be interesting to you, that there are more than 170 families and shelters throughout the US. And the typical family is a single mom in her 20s with 2 children under the age of 6. At the fastest growing population of those experiencing homelessness is children. I also thought that being so close to just celebrating Veterans Day and knowing that we have veterans that are experiencing homelessness here on our campus, there are more veterans in America experiencing homelessness today than there were American casualties in the Vietnam War. In the Vietnam War, there was a little over 59,000 American casualties. Today, we have over 120,000 homeless veterans in America. I also wanted to share with you what some of our children in our Bright Space and our after school program feel about being homeless. And this just gives you an idea of the trauma that they have experienced before coming to the Open Door mission. And that's why we have we've implemented not only counseling for adults, but counseling for children in our Lydia House, as well as through our art therapy, music therapy, and our animal therapy. You know, interesting enough, our children also have picked up on some negative, oops, sorry, I went too fast, some unhealthy coping skills and defense mechanisms on how they try to cope with being homeless. And interesting enough, our children that are growing up experiencing homelessness have had already exposure to violence in their world. And that would explain a lot of the trauma that they're dealing with that comes out in how they act at school and how they act here at the Open Door Mission. I want to talk about hunger today because we said we wanted to catch up on hunger and homelessness. And so I realized that in 20 minutes, we've covered a lot of ground about homelessness. Is there any questions that you might have that you'd like me to answer? You can just unmute your button and we can just talk briefly. Or I can just keep going and see if I can get through this in the next 10 minutes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Carol.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry. No, when you were listing the reasons for homelessness, that reminded me of the adverse childhood events list that was developed about 25 years ago. And that if you grow up with these situations, and some of them are like car wreck, fire, divorce.
Yes.
And all this, there were a number of other ones, you know, besides, and that will influence your health later on in life. And that people who have had these ACE scores, if they're high, they oftentimes end up with high blood pressure, heart attacks. They just have all kinds of health problems later on in life. And really starting from behind the 8 ball. And when you realize that, it's very hard to judge people, because most of these people are just, they kind of start, they kind of started out, they were kind of facing the wrong way when the gun went off, so that they couldn't run, with everybody else. And so, yeah, it's kind of difficult.
Interesting enough, Carol, I just did a webinar training for the ACE, for the Adverse Childhood Experience.
Mhm.
And so I passed out to my constituents in the webinar to actually do the ACE score before they started the webinar.
Mhm.
And there's quite a difference when, for instance, and I even showed mine that I was a 2. There's quite a difference when you're a 0 or a 1 or a 2, and then on the other spectrum that you're maybe a 10 or a 15.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, odds are against you right out of the gate. And some of those adverse childhood experiences are traumatic upon each other. And so experiencing homelessness is traumatic enough, but they've had trauma before they've even entered our doors. That's so true. So true. Well, let me, if Keith doesn't have anything, or Logan or Gwen, I'm going to keep going. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's quite a lot to
that's
take in. Quite a lot to take in at one time. Poverty, the state of one who lacks a usual or socially acceptable amount of money or material possessions. And interesting enough, I wanted to throw some things up about the current food insecurity issues in our community that relate to hunger. Approximately 7% of people are living below the poverty line in the Nebraska and Iowa report card that came out for 2023. And 28% of children in Nebraska and Iowa do not know where their next meal will come from. And this is a staggering number. 10.3% seniors are living below the poverty level, and 7.5% veterans are living below the poverty level. So when you add up the 28 to the 38 to the 45, we're almost at 50% of Nebraskans and Iowas living below the poverty level. That to me, I think is staggering to know. What are the challenges for those living in poverty? Well, the cycle is an entrapment. When you cannot have your basic necessities and your critical resources like transportation, education, finances. People tell me all the time, Candace, just get people a job. If I had $1 for every time someone told me that over the last 28 years, we would have no financial issues at the Open Door Mission. But truly, it's more than just getting a job, because we have a 2.2 unemployment rate in Nebraska. It is not just a point of getting a job. It's about lack of opportunity to a livable wage, about the lack of opportunity to the right job. And I need to be honest with you, we have a true lack of work ethic in society today. You may not realize that. It doesn't discriminate. It goes across all socioeconomic, gender, and just all of those different ethnicities. But there is a lack of work ethic in today's society. Food insecurity, 1 in 6 people in the US are going hungry, and 12.1% of Nebraskans have a food insecurity issue. And I will share with you that that's up to in the last year. There are so many risks to living in poverty, and I am realizing that I am not going to get through a lot of this. So I'm going to jump to a couple of other slides, if you don't mind, because this is the first time I've tried to do a webinar in 30 minutes. So please bear with me. I'm going to jump to some things that I think are really important to talk about when it comes to hunger. When it comes to hunger, there are some reasons why people can move out of poverty. And the 2 things that I believe next to the gospel that are key to people being able to move out of poverty and have their physical and spiritual needs met are 2 things: education and relationships. And 4 reasons that attribute to that is it's too painful to stay. When our guests come through our facility, and a lot of times they're experiencing homelessness, yes, they've burned some bridges behind them, but a lot of times it's too painful to stay in their addictive lifestyle. Number 2, they have a vision or a goal and they are determined to reach it and they are motivated. Number three, a key relationship. A relationship, somebody has come alongside them at school or church or in the workplace, and they've put their arm alongside them and they've begun to mentor them into a new lifestyle of opportunity. And believe it or not, another way that people leave poverty is that they have a special talent or skill. I literally could have the next Taylor Swift staying here right now. We have so much talent in our guests and consumers and our tenants that stay here. They're so gifted in their art and their music. And actually, maybe Brett Favre is here because they can sure throw a football. You just don't know. And so I want to be a good respecter of your time. I want to thank you for allowing me to share. You can follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to share. You can join us in December. We're going to tackle another topic of hope. And so we're super excited. This is our first attempt at catching up. And we're going to keep trying and see if we can gain a more larger audience. So Carol and Keith, if you found this to be helpful in understanding this topic a little better, I hope you might share it with your family and colleagues and join us in December. What did you think, Keith and Carol? Oh, God, she just gave me a thumbs up.
Well, my whole purpose, I've been volunteering some at noon in the kitchen. That's been a great
Oh.
experience, meeting some great volunteers and getting to know some of the people that are using the services there. But sometimes I wonder, I guess maybe a lot of the volunteers know quite a bit about the Open Door mission, but I sense that there probably are a lot of them that really don't at a deeper level. So I think one thing I can certainly do is talk to some of the volunteers that I'm getting to know, which are terrific, just terrific people. I'm meeting some really interesting people in terms of the volunteers. A couple of things. The last time I served, former Governor, now Senator Pete Ricketts, was next to me, and on the other side of him was Representative Don Bacon. I guess you're doing some outreach with some of those folks in government.
It's interesting, Keith. And first, can I say thank you for volunteering? Because wow, we couldn't do it without our volunteers. We really couldn't. Our whole point of doing our podcast, Coffee with Candace, has a whole different flavor. We don't get into some deep issues. We just do some surface things where we just talk about what's currently going on at the Open Door mission. Kristen has a great interview of a life change, and then we tell of ways to get involved. But we don't really talk about the social issues, or we don't get into some of the answer. There's no real feedback, Keith. And we heard back from our volunteers and as well as some of our supporters that they wish that they had more opportunity to have some face-to-face and learn more about the people we're serving, what we do at the Open Door mission, how we are impacted. And so this is, I know, probably not the right time to start Meaningful Moments with Candace because it's a huge holiday season. But we thought if we did it for a couple times in the holiday season that we could work out all the bugs. And then when we come out the gate in January, we'll have all those bugs worked out for when we have hundreds of people join us. We had Governor Ricketts and Senator now Bacon and Ricketts here. And they actually gave us quite a bit of their time to talk to them about hunger, food insecurity, homelessness. And I was brutally honest with them about my frustrations with how this works, because there is laws that are made in Washington and they trickle down to us at the local level. And we just are not seeing the impact. And not to be offensive, but where's the bacon? We're not seeing the money really making the impact that I thought it would make with some of our COVID dollars and ARPA funds for housing and food.
Just one last comment from me, and I don't know enough about the funding yet. at the Open Door Mission. I'm trying to learn more about that, but if I'm correct, I mean, you don't get a lot of government funding.
Right, we receive no government funds for operations, so. if
See, I
you
think
want-
I think that's something that really really resonates with a lot of donors. I know it does with me, and I know a lot of other people that I think that really resonates with too. In fact, that's what really impressed me about the Open Door Mission. Besides the mission of the ministry, of course, which is the
Yes.
number one thing, but I thought, man, that is really, I came from an organization that's 96% dependent upon Medicaid funding, but still, you know, we raised millions of dollars to provide the quality at Mosaic for the people that we serve. But, you know, when I think about the little that you get from government funding, that's, to me, that is such a powerful talking point. I mean, I wouldn't overuse it, but I think it's a powerful talking point.
You know, I think you bring up some good points that we probably do not emphasize that enough, Keith. We do have it on our financial accountability page on our website, that we don't receive government funds. And then we actually have our 990 and our audited financials on our website as well. So we're a pretty open book. But you are right. We need to toot our horn about that more often, that we are community funded, truly community funded. So we couldn't emphasize more, give where you live, because that's who supports the Open Door Mission.
I know
Well,
if I'm
one
talking
thing-
to someone, I'm going to emphasize that.
Thank you.
And one thing too, if you receive funding from the government, I know when we were in Lincoln, our parish had started St. Monica's Home for women who were diverted from court with a drug situation, and they wanted to keep their children with them and get better, you know. And when they started accepting government funds, then they were given to believe, well, they can't have the religious aspect of it. And to me, if you can't talk about Jesus at your place and so on, because you're worried that you're going to get in trouble about your government funding, then it's like, is that really worth it? You know, that, and so that I think that's really appealing, that you do not accept government funds, so you can do
It
this
is.
the right way.
It is true. You cannot preach on Uncle Sam's dollar. And so that is one of the reasons that we don't compete for government funds, is because we do have a faith-based component, although none of our guests or constituents or consumers or tenants have to participate to receive services. We just believe that that hope is what they're missing in their lives. And it's been proven to be true, or else we wouldn't continue to have 91% of our graduates clean and sober 1 year after graduation. We currently are almost hovering at 50% of our staff base being graduates of our long-term programs that have gone back to school to further their education and be part of our team here at the Open Door Mission. So, well, I sure hope you'll join us next month. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your comments. I really do. And we look forward to doing this in December. We'll be pairing it up with all of our, through the next calendar year, our National Awareness Days will be what we're catching up on. So you'll see those national days that we've been doing, understanding about suicide, mental health, all of those different things. And that's what we'll be catching up about. So I hope you'll join us. And Keith, I look forward to seeing you on Mondays in the kitchen.
Yeah, I have a number of times scheduled. It's kind of it's getting a little, yeah, it's I've been looking for something for a while, so it's been great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, God bless you. And I look forward to seeing you real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vikings.
Bye-bye.